Thanks for tuning in to the Fit Pro podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Fit Pro podcast. That is www.audibletrial.com/Fit Pro podcast. I will leave a link in the show notes below. Make sure after today's episode you go and click it and check it out. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Enjoy today's show. Episode 52 of the Fit Pro podcast. Welcome back to the show, guys and girls. Before we get into today's episode, which is gonna be a killer, we have Maximilian Berger on. He is a very, very talented individual and very good at what he does. So if you don't know who he is, make sure you read the show notes or just listen to the damn episode. On today's episode, we're going to discuss absolutely everything. We go on, we ramble a bit, but it's a bit of fun. This is a two-parter. Obviously, this is part one. And if you like this episode, make sure you give us a big thumbs up on Facebook and subscribe on iTunes at Fit Pro Podcast. We are also on iHeartRadio. We are also on Google Play. We are also on Stitcher Radio. Where else are we? Anywhere you can find a decent podcast, we are there. So make sure you check us out. We're also on YouTube. I almost forgot we are on YouTube now. And guys, that is all I have today. Enjoy the show. I will talk to you at the end. Peace. Welcome back to the Fit Pro Podcast, listeners. I am your host, Marvin Fayes, and today we have a very special guest. We've got Max Berger on. He is an instructor for Real Social Dynamics. He's one of the international leaders in dating advice. He's been on 3 world tours, and he just launched the Natural Dating and Personal Development course. Max, take a second, let us know who you are personally, and introduce yourself, man.
Cool, awesome. Well, Marvin, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, there can't be much more said. Like the past 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, something like that, have been absolutely crazy. I always mentioned that I was not a guy who was naturally good with girls. I kind of had to learn how to become naturally good with girls, if that makes any sense. And I mean, I'm 26 years old now, and you know, you and me, Marvin, we just had a chat about that. That, you know, when you're in the beginning of your 20s, you're kind of unhappy with your situation, you're unhappy with your dating life and whatnot. And, you know, that's the problem that surfaces in the beginning. And someday, I've never been on a date, never been with a girl, stuff like that. I was 20 years old. And someday, I just typed into Google how to pick up chicks, right? And you know, from that on, it says like, oh, you got to go out, you got to become social. So I've embarked on this journey of just like becoming a better person myself, becoming more outgoing, becoming better in social situations and stuff like that. And it's been a crazy ride. And at some point, I got offered to work with RSD, with Real Social Dynamics. And, you know, then I worked with them. And then they said like, hey, go on world tour. You're the new instructor. And it's crazy. And you're catching me in a period of my life where I'm done with hardcore traveling. Like I said, I've traveled almost 3 years, almost consecutively without a break. And I just got done with that in September and settled down up here in Scandinavia in the snow. And I'm just chilling here. And I'm branching out a little more into the entrepreneurial side of things because, you know, when you're traveling, giving seminars, you're basically hands in the dirt. You know, you're doing the manual labor, you're shaking hands, you're coaching one-on-one, you're giving the seminars, right? You're doing stuff right there down on the ground in the field, if you will. And now that I kind of have a little bit more of an overview, I'll back out of it. I have my head in the clouds, as Gary Vaynerchuk would say. So I have more overview of, you know, the whole vision, building systems like crazy. I'm half German, half Austrian, so I think it's in my genetics to build systems. Building systems, building teams, growing, marketing, you know, trying to get a farther reach, reaching out, branching out into other things. And life's been great. I mean, who would have thought, you know, I always try to put things in perspective. I studied Latin and English, which is, you know, 2 languages. I was about to become a professor for that. Before that, I studied English. But we could talk about the. Before that, I studied music, and I couldn't because I got an injury and all these things. And I never saw myself as that kind of guy that could travel the world while actually making money off something that he really likes, and, you know, like attaining this level of freedom. I never saw myself as that guy, yet I am, apparently. So it's interesting.
Yeah, man, you're now that guy. You're now able to inspire other people to do exactly the same thing. And let's break it down a little bit, because not a lot of people know what real social dynamics is, or RSD, but you'll be surprised how many people do. And
Yeah.
I was actually speaking to one of my friends today at lunch, and I was telling her that I'm getting Max on from RSD, and she's like, "What's RSD? Explain it to me." And I explained it to her, and even as a woman, she thought that that was one of the best ideas she'd ever heard, and one of the best business ideas she'd ever heard, and why isn't anybody else doing it here, and blah blah. So she was actually quite engaging on the idea, and a lot of people see it as a sleazy thing, but when you expand upon what it initially starts from, that guys looking to, say, pick up girls, there's so many more layers that you then put on top of that as you're going through the journey. What attracted you to becoming an instructor for RSD?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of cool that you talked about that with your friend, and it's funny because we're getting more and more girls to follow us. It's so crazy. We started purely as a company that just like, you're a guy, here's how you get more girls, right?
Yeah.
But so many more girls are getting into it because, like, hey, the self-development stuff that you guys teach, the social stuff, right? About how to read social cues, how to get better at being a sociable person. All this is hella interesting. So it's so funny. Like, it has this fascination towards women as well, and it's because, and this is something that always fascinated me about being an instructor. It's like you're this little bit of a bad boy, but you're not this total retard bad boy. You know what I mean? You're like, when I see, like, I teach dating advice, girls are like, okay, a little bit of a macho, right? You're like a little bit of a player vibe, and I'm totally cool with that, because once they get to know me or my content better, they're like, okay, on the one hand, you're this player dude, you swear on stage, right? You party hard, but you're also a smart guy. At the end of the day, you're a guy who's reading books, who's taking his health very, very seriously, who's taking his nutrition very seriously. And those two extremes have always been something that fascinated me. And to be honest, those two extremes are also part of why I wanted to become an RSD instructor. I always looked up to motivational speakers. I always found it hella interesting when certain politicians can talk a crowd into certain things, you know? Like, I mean, look at Donald Trump now. That's all over the news. He is a great freaking speaker. So that was always a fascination for me. But on the other hand, I always felt like, okay, if you're a politician, if you're a motivational speaker, you can't say everything, right? You can't swear, you can't act like a retard on stage. Like, you have to have a certain form of professionalism on stage. And I always found it fascinating with RSD. When I would watch Tyler or Julian on stage or on videos, I'd be like, okay, they are professionals, but they're also just young guys. And they don't mind, and they swear, and they're free. So there was this level of freedom, while at the same time having a level of inspiration. You could inspire other people, but at the same time, you could totally be yourself. And funny enough, I always tell that to my friends and colleagues. I'm like, one of the big reasons why I like, or one of the things that my dream job would always have to have was, number one, I could wear whatever the hell I wanted. I don't need to wear dress shirts. I don't need to wear nice shoes. Like, half the time when I'm on stage, I wear 2 items of clothing, and that's shorts, random shorts, and a sleeveless shirt, because it's comfortable for me, and it's cool because people don't judge me upon that, you know. And the other thing is that I could freely talk about anything. Like, I could swear, you know, as funny as that sounds, that I don't have to act like I'm this professional guy. No, I can act like the young boy I am. I can act like the idiot that I am. And that has always fascinated me. And at the same time, I always thought, like, when I was, in my teenage years and early 20s, I felt like I was missing out so much. I felt like I was restricted because, my father never told me how to get good with girls. He was busy with work. I was like kind of lacking this male role model, I would say.
Yeah.
And, I remember back in the days, I always wished I had someone to show me what to do, right? I wish I had an older brother or an uncle or somebody that says, okay, hey, Max, check it out. This is how you get girls. This is how you go to the gym. This is how you lift. This is what you should eat. But I didn't have anybody. I was just kind of like blind tapping into darkness. And once I, accumulated knowledge myself and I trial and error thousands of times, I'm like, this is cool. This is great because now I can like kind of give it back to my past self, to all those kind of guys that are out there right now searching for this guidance. I can help them out. I can show them that, hey, you can be a short, weird Austrian with a patchy beard, but you can still make it. You can still make things happen. And I kind of like, I don't know. I like that. I like showing people that their excuses are none. They should shut up and they should do it, because if I can do it, anybody can do it.
And I love that, man. I love you made so many good examples in that last bit, man, because what resonates with me personally is we come from a generation of hard workers, of people that generally, if you don't come from money, you worked, like your parents worked hard for what they had, and they generally didn't have time for all the fluffy stuff. They didn't have time for teaching you how to pick up chicks or taking you to the gym because they were too busy working. And
very true, right?
That resonates with me. But what the newer generation, what our generation has now enabled the next generation to do is to see all these examples of things that have happened that our parents didn't have. Like, for example, YouTube, podcasts. You got so many different ways of making a living, following your passion. You'd be kind of crazy not to at least try. And the last guest I had on, like literally 30 minutes before you, we talked about this in depth of what harm can it cause? What harm can it cause in today's world if you just give it a go? See if you can find something you like doing and just try and do that for a living, because there's so many platforms available for people now. And back to one other point, so I'm going to rant a little bit now too. You said you wanted to be an instructor because you could wear whatever clothing you wanted to wear and just be comfortable on stage. That is exactly the same reason why years ago I became a personal trainer, because I didn't want to wear overalls. I wanted to wear a singlet and joggers. I wanted all day. That's all I wanted to do, and that could be my uniform, and I love that. So there's similarities between yourself and myself, and obviously we were both doing something that's completely left field. You're basically the white Hitch, white Will Smith, and that absolutely fascinates me, and I'm sure it fascinates a lot of the listeners. But what they don't see is how you got there initially, and we spoke about this a little bit off mic, but I think we should speak about it again. How much work did it take for you to become an instructor? Because it didn't happen overnight. Geez, like I actually just talked about it yesterday with a friend of mine, and we were hanging out having dinner, and she was like, because we went to the gym, and I teach her a little bit about lifting and stuff, and she asked me, she's like, oh, I feel so exhausted, like my heart is racing. And then it reminded me of my time as an early instructor, how my heart was racing almost all the time because I was under constant stress. So it's a long road there because, I started off with nothing. I, grew up in Austrian countryside, moved to Vienna, the first big city in my life. And when you grow up in a village on the countryside, it's kind of like everybody knows everybody, so you always have the same kind of friend circle, right? And you think you're okay, but then you move to a big city, and all of a sudden you realize, bam, wait a minute, I don't know anybody, I have no friends, and then I have no idea how I get these friends, right? Because back in the days, you would go to elementary school, and you would just have your 20 classmates, those are your friends now. But I had no idea how to make friends, so
and I had no experience with girls. I was always the shy, weird kind of. I liked heavy metal and computer games. So I was like the nerdy guy, and like Vienna was basically the mirror that showed me, hey, look at you. You don't have anything. So I had to start going out. I had to start becoming more social. You know, tons of trial and error, and you know. Random example, you have to transition at some point from don't drink when you go out to do this whole thing sober, because, you know, if you start going out 7 nights a week in order to get into practice of talking to people, talking to girls, if you have a beer every day, it's already has lots of bad effects on you.
So alcoholism.
Yeah. You know, things like that. And then going to my first date, I remember, dude, I was sweating. I was 2 hours too early. 2 hours too early because I panicked and thought I might show up too late. So I was there 2 hours early, then I panicked again because I thought, what if she randomly walks through the street and she sees me waiting there already? So I was like hiding in the metro stop somewhere for 2 hours. That was before smartphones, so I couldn't really do anything on my phone either. You know, went to my first date. I knew I would have to like kind of kiss her, and I think I was in that same cafe, sitting on that same couch for 5 hours with that girl. But I did end up kissing her, and it was, you know, I think that was one of the milestones where I'm like, okay, I can create something out of nothing. I can like walk up to a girl that will never know me, that's not in my school, that's not in my friend circle. It's just I think she was at a concert, and we chatted, we exchanged numbers, and then, you know, a couple of days later, I'm on a date kissing her. That was just mind blowing. And I'm saying these stories because I want to put it in perspective to how it looked like for me. Like, many people may hear that and they're like, well, first date, sure, kiss, yeah, why not? But for me, that was like so out of my reality.
Yeah.
To be able to kiss a girl, I was like, oh my God. And, you know, I went out more and more and more and more. I did that for 2-3 years. I got great results with girls, you know, got like girlfriends and you know, all kinds of sexual experiences, and I was starting to like have a glimpse into this, like, okay, that's a great life. And I realized, you know, I was 22 years old by then. I realized that, okay, Max, if you put in the work into something, doesn't matter how retarded you are, if you put in the work in something, Max, you can make things happen. Because I sincerely thought I'm very retarded when it comes to being social. I'm natural introvert, you know, naturally socially awkward. But it was such an important lesson for me as a young man to realize, like, if you put in the work, no matter how little of talent you have, you will get results. And that was great. And then, you know, I started to get to know RSD. You know, their reach is worldwide. So I was sitting in Vienna watching their YouTube videos, and I'm like, dude, geez, those guys are amazing. And I watched more and more of their stuff, right? My game got better. I started reading. I started meditating because they talk about meditation so much. And they always had, like, you know, they're very big on their community. So they always had like little internships of like, hey, we need someone to help out with that for free. And I was always like kind of the guy who did it. You know, I was always like, yeah, I'll do it. Let me help you. So I had all kinds of like little mini jobs within RSD. It was all unpaid internships. And so I kind of like developed this reputation amongst the staff of RSD. Like, hey, there's this Austrian dude, he's super motivated, he apparently doesn't sleep, and he does all this stuff for free. And at some point, you know, Tyler, you know, the fat, balding, ginger guy, we all know his face, I guess. He was in need for a new assistant, so naturally they're like, okay, what kind of guys are available? And then they're like, there's this Austrian dude, he loves us, he's been proven many times that he's very reliable. So they asked me, and at that time, like I mentioned to you earlier, I was stupid, you know. I had just quit college, and I was good at college too. I was about to become a professor for Latin and English, like I mentioned earlier, and I just quit. I quit out of nothing, and I was never that kind of guy who would do such a thing, you know. And I quit it. I'm like, I'll be a dating coach. Totally retarded, totally not planned, and, you know, young and naive. And I had just quit college, and obviously the dating coach thing didn't work out too well on my own. And then they said, like, hey, do you wanna do a 6 months trial internship, unpaid? You'd have to come to Miami and stuff like that. And, you know, I borrowed money from my parents, borrowed money from my friend, from my brother, from my bank, 15,000 euros, and 2 weeks later I was on that flight to Miami and started assisting Tyler. And you know, he always has this, Tyler has a gift. He can see talent in people where nobody sees it. And I guess he saw talent in me. He saw like how I was handling social media, how excited I was about everything, how positive my vibe was, how motivated I am with all the work I do. So he told me to just start shooting videos and get on Instagram and stuff like that. And I did all of that, and I grew it, and I grew it, and I grew it. And 6 months later, I had my first 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, and then they were like, okay, if you want to, you can become the new instructor. It would mean another 6 months trial period unpaid, but you'd go on tour, you'd travel Europe, you'll travel the US, you'll travel Australia, we'll pay for that, and you can do what you love. And then if you're still good after 6 months, you start getting paid. And, you know, as I was 23, 24, I was like, dude, traveling through Europe, I don't need to get paid, but I get to travel for free. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Sign me up. So I did it, and my brand took off very, very well. I was very lucky, and I think I was there at the right time, you know, with the right kind of content. And my seminars were almost always booked, and it was a crazy freaking ride. And I'll never forget, I was broke as I was so broke. I had to duct tape my shoes, you know, with black duct tape, because the shoes were black, so I could still get in the club. And you know, lots of peanut butter and jelly, because that's the stuff that, you know, fills your stomach, and because I couldn't really afford any healthier food. And then I started getting paid, and for me, my head was down in my work on my laptop, editing, writing all day, like. At the airport, you know, we were sitting there, we had to wait until they would call our names, because we would still sit there editing. And the first time I got paid, like, I didn't even realize that, you know, I would look at my bank account and I was like, what are all those black numbers? Oh, I don't have debt anymore. Like, I paid it all off because I'm getting paid. And, you know, never say that to Tyler, but to be honest, I would do this shit for free. I would do this, you know, if I could, you know, get a living, I could go to the gym, eat healthy, you know, I would do it for free, and I feel the same fascination. I hear it in you, like, you love what you do as well. And I think if you manage to get in a position where you would do something for free, but you get paid, you won. That's the best thing in the world.
100%, man. I totally agree with all that. And fuck it. I'm doing this for free at the moment. It's a fairly new podcast, but I'll do it every single day because I enjoy it, and I know there's a light at the end of the tunnel. That I can then obviously do this and be able to travel, and that is the end goal for myself personally, is be able to still motivate, inspire, and do what I love, and be able to travel, be able to live life on my own terms. And I love that that's what you've done. And I think there's a lesson to be learned there for a lot of people in listening to that story about it had been a grind. It had been a grind up until recently, I suspect. When did you start getting paid?
I started getting paid after 1 entire year of working my ass off. And that's not like, you know, you wake up at 8, you show up at work at 9. That's like you pass out asleep at 5 a.m. in the morning on the floor.
24-hour days.
Yeah. And you get up like 3 hours later, like, let's shoot the video. You know, it's like, it's crazy. It's like, you know, you've been coaching for 16 hours. And then you're like, okay, the sun is going up. That would actually be a sick shot if we would go to the beach now, right? So you take all your gear, you drag it to the beach, and you record a video. Your voice is sore, your eyes are red. You're still in your, like, nightclub stuff. You know, you see, like, people commuting to work, and you haven't even gotten to sleep. So those kind of works. And I did that for 1 entire year, and then I started getting paid. I started getting paid very well, but at that point, I was still $36,000 in debt. I mean, I did get my traveling expenses covered. I did get my lodgings covered, but I still, you know, had to pay food and clothing or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So I accumulated $36,000 in debt, and that was February 2014, I think, 2 years ago. And but then, because I got paid very well, because I kept, pedal to the metal, hardcore hustling, I was able to pay that off pretty well. And I made a great deal of money in that year. And then 2015 was pretty good as well. And now 2016 with the launch of the Natural, things become automized, So what I did this year is I didn't tour as much anymore. I stayed in Austria. I recorded this online course. And, now that's like this product that sells. So I wake up every morning and more people bought the product.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't actively have to be in the field anymore. I still do those things, but it's slowly getting more automized. And it's more of this like entrepreneurial side where you're like, okay, how can we create more traffic? How can we bring more value to more people? Whereas if you do the one-on-one coaching, it's you can probably relate with the personal training. Mm-hmm. That's just like a whole other level. Like on the personal level, it's cool because you train people personally, you get a lot of knowledge. Whereas if you would only sit at home creating online products, you stop losing the feel of what kind of content people need.
Yeah.
So you need to find a balance between those two.
So, like at the moment, would you say you're working on your business, not so much in your business?
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. I'm still doing. I think once a month I'm doing coachings. I have a coaching coming up tomorrow in Helsinki, where I'll go out with two guys. So you should, even if you work on your business, you should never lose touch with the business itself.
Yeah, but I think it's very important for people to realize there is those two phases, especially when you're building a big brand where you're working in your business, building it, but eventually there has to be a point where you have to stop, look at it, see where it's going, and how you can how you can progress a little bit further without working as hard, but also just thinking of the next step. And you've obviously built a brand now. How initially, obviously you got the RSD branding on you. How did you sort of, you haven't really detached yourself from it, but you've built your own thing inside of it. How did you go about doing that?
Well, whenever I look at my old notes from back in the days, I would always have a little notepad, installed on my phone. And whenever I would have an idea that seemed fairly new, I would write it down. And on top of that notepad, it always said, try to teach something you have never heard from another instructor. So you mentioned that I was lucky enough to be kind of like taken under that umbrella of RSD, right? I didn't have to 100% build everything from scratch. Because, RSD fans were kind of exposed to my content. But then on the other hand, I had the problem of, okay, I need to find my own way and I need to stand out. I need to figure out what direction my brand goes. And if I look at my older stuff, I would say it almost took me 1 to 2 years, my first year, if not even the first 2 years, of finding my own kind of style. Because, you experiment around a lot, especially when it comes to public speaking. You kind of speak in the same voices as you hear from your heroes, right? You kind of crack the same jokes. You have similar type of content. And you need to start to branch out of that, because you need to go from consumer to someone who creates things. Because when I was getting better with girls, when I was going out doing things, I was basically just copying what I saw those RSD instructors do, but then I had to transition into being an RSD instructor myself. And some critics at the beginning always said like, oh, Max is just a clone of Julian, clone of Tyler, and so on and so forth. And it's true, I didn't even deny it. I'm like, dude, that's the guys that I learned from.
Yeah.
And so the challenge for me was really like finding my own stuff and being okay with that. Like being courageous enough, daring enough to try something new instead of just rehashing something that someone said already,
Yeah, and
that was more like the content part, right? In terms of work ethic of how I would go along, I mean, those were things of don't stop stones. I was hungry. I was so hungry. I remember that. I just wanted to be the best and the fastest and all that stuff. And that was cool because I had to prove myself. And I was still assisting Tyler, so we would shoot until 7 a.m. in the morning, and I would always know, okay, Max, you can go to sleep now, or you can grab that camera, go out to the beach one more time and record something for your stuff, and so I kind of had to find a balance. I kind of had to come up with the willpower to still work on my stuff while at the same time giving 100% for Tyler's stuff because I was assisting him.
And that is it is really, it's so very true that we definitely mimic the people that we learn from, and an example of that would be like somebody who's become a public speaker and then listens to a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk. They're going to swear a lot, they're going to carry on a lot, right? Exactly. You see it in sport, like the basketball is a clear example. You see a lot of the same type of player. You see Michael Jordan in Kobe Bryant. You see Michael Jordan in LeBron James. There's a reason, because that formula works. But then you've also got to determine your own formula. And I think that's an important lesson to learn for a lot of people, especially in the fitness industry, because there's so many people that are exactly the same. They're exactly the same. What differentiates you from your neighbor? Nothing. Okay, I'm going to go train with your neighbor because you're not bringing anything new to the table. It is definitely something that people need to get out of, but it's something you have to start with, because it's better than starting with nothing and not knowing where to start from as well. And that was part 1 of this interview with Max Berger. If you like what you heard and you want to hear more, make sure you head to fitpropodcast.com to check out our archive of amazing content. We've got over, obviously, 52 episodes on there. Check it out. Thumbs up on the Facebook page, at me on Twitter, at fitpropodcast. Look out for part 2. It should come out in a week or so. You know how we do. The next one's going to be me just riffing it, going through some things, and just sorting out my life, really. If you like Max and you want to know more about Max, in the show notes, go and check him out. Check out his social. Follow him everywhere. The Natural, his program, is available now. Go check that out. Max is a beast, guys. We will catch you on the next one. I don't have anything else to say. If you've got something to say, let me know. Make sure you hit on Facebook, thumbs up, and send me a post. Peace, guys. I will catch you on the next one.